Being a wrestler is all about growing your own personal brand to be as big as possible. You are selling yourself at the end of the day, and it's of the utmost importance that you are seen, heard, and talked about as much as humanly possible if you really want to make a splash in this business. You can train hard, spend hours in the gym, hone your craft by watching all the tape, all in the name of getting spotlight on thyself. Or you could just stand in the background of somebody else's shot and make funny faces. That's essentially what this lot did. So I am Gareth here from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestlers who were hilariously upstaged by other wrestlers. Number 10, Braun Strowman gets upstaged by Kurt Angle. In 2017, the world's angriest sheep, Braun Strowman, got a real taste for flipping vehicles and other stuff onto their side. He just saw things and went, yeah. He most famously did it with an ambulance. No, not like that. But returned to the hobby after a short break on the January 15, 2018 edition of Monday Night Raw. After flipping out at General Manager Kurt Angle, Strowman went on a rampage that saw him furiously break into one of the television trucks, and as you can probably guess, chaos ensued. After shoving everyone out of the damn thing, Strowman managed to lift the truck up by its cab and flip it onto its side in a tremendous display of strength and special effects. Unfortunately though, the main thing people tend to remember about this entire moment was the lifeless delivery from the GM of one particular line. When Angle was told that the monster was on a tear backstage, he remarked how worried he was about the vehicle being damaged. However, his line about the truck being worth $12 million was delivered with about as much enthusiasm as someone reading out the shopping list. Angle's cadence and lack of effort when it came to this line just made an entire thing that could have been really dramatic and intense feel like goofy comedy, and it was brilliant. Number 9, The Miz gets upstaged by DAMIEN MIZDOW. Now, this isn't so much a single moment, but an entire character/run, really. One that catapulted Damien Sandow to superstar status for a bit. After falling off the rails after a pretty calamitous run as Mr. Money in the Bank, Sandow looked to be stuck in yet another dead-end gimmick when he was assigned the role of the Miz's stunt double. As DAMIEN MIZDOW, the former intellectual savior of the masses, was told to pretty much act like Miz, talk like Miz, bump like Miz, be Miz. And you know what? It was glorious, wasn't it? Sandow got hugely over just copying the Miz and doing everything that he did. People loved it, they lapped it up. And it even got to the point where MIZDOW was more popular than the person he was aping. I know, what a world. And eventually WWE actually got wise to this whole popularity surrounding the MIZDOW figure and wrote a little bit of jealousy into the Miz, which all culminated in a huge rivalry, something that blew the roof off arenas around the world. They made so much money, only they didn't, did they? Because all we got in the end was a nothing match on Raw, and then Sandow just fizzled away, really. Great work, guys. Number 8, Triple H and JBL get upstaged by the SANDMAN. The Vince McMahon illegitimate son storyline. What could have been? The long-standing rumor is that the angle, which of course involved Vince McMahon getting blown up in a limousine, was meant to result in the unveiling of a secret son and then lead to a battle over control of the company. Unfortunately, the real-life murders committed by Chris Benoit shortly afterwards painted the entire storyline in pretty bad taste. Later that year, WWE decided to run the gimmick again though, and it was announced that Vince McMahon's baby boy was actually a member of the roster. This then led to a segment on Raw where McMahon was fed a ton of clues as to who his potential son could be, while loads of people were stood around the ring. This would then eliminate suspects Guess Who style. After determining that his son was fair-skinned, fair-haired, and a former singles champion, that left McMahon with just 3 options: Triple H, JBL, or the SANDMAN. Everyone was quite rightly confused by the ECW man still being in the running, and he didn't really need to do anything. Just him being there was surreal, was bizarre, and made everyone just go, wait, what's happening? And while it was distracting for a second, the real winner was of course eventually revealed to be Hornswoggle, and I say winner, I'm using quotes. But just imagine a world where we could have had Sand McMahon. Print those shirts. Number 7, Vince McMahon gets upstaged by Paul London. Harking back to that limo explosion that I literally just mentioned, this very strange moment happened just a few seconds before Vince McMahon was blown to Kingdom Come. At the end of an appreciation night in his honor because WWE and Vince McMahon, McMahon slowly made his way out to the back and into his luxury vehicle with a somber mood filling the backstage environment. Then boom, up in smoke. The limo wasn't the only thing that met its end that night though, as a wrestler actually reportedly reportedly eventually got fired due to McMahon's own skittish tendencies. Whilst walking towards his ill-fated car, McMahon passed through a room with many of his employees all stood around, looking rather dramatic and just composed, and then Paul London is doing this. And why? Why is Paul London smiling like that? Why? I mean, it's hilarious, but why? In amongst all these sad faces, the former Cruiserweight champion is just beaming like a Cheshire cat. And it is impossible to watch back this already rather bizarre moment without being drawn to the grin that reportedly led to him eventually getting released. You're never fully dressed without a smile, they say, but London got a proper dressing down by the boss as a result of his. Number 6, John Cena and Batista get upstaged by Vince McMahon. Maybe Paul London was just getting revenge for Batista and John Cena because of something that went down 2.5 years earlier, I say, as the boss firmly overshadowed them in the closing stages of the 2005 Royal Rumble. In a now infamous moment, Cena and Batista both went over the top rope at the same damn time, hitting the floor so closely at exactly the same point that trying to declare a unanimous winner was, again, rather impossible. Absolutely enraged that his carefully executed spot had gone to the dogs on the night, Vince angrily strode down to the ring to start throwing out commands. He then slid into the ring and completely blew out one of his legs after he banged it against the apron. This then led to another surreal visual of Vince sat on the floor, barking out orders to everybody, looking very confused, and it just generally distracted from the actual match itself because you had this 60-year-old man, like a very confused, angry toddler, sat there going, "You do this, come here, you go do that," and you got two massive men in Batista and John Cena going, "Alright boss, I don't know what's going on." Still, this story has become synonymous with the event. Although maybe not for any reason that Vince McMahon would be happy with, but when is he ever happy, eh? Number 5, Hulk Hogan gets upstaged by Shawn Michaels. In terms of wrestlers deliberately mucking about in matches to get revenge on their in-ring colleagues, there are few more notable, or hilarious for that matter, instances than the one that went down in the main event of SummerSlam 2005. Hulk Hogan was famously very easy to work with and never once wanted to change things at the last minute. Oh wait, no, the opposite of that. After starting a feud with Shawn Michaels, the Hulkster apparently went back on plans to have a trilogy with HBK. Instead, he wanted just one match, he then wanted to win it, and he wanted Shawn Michaels to turn heel. Great. However, the Hulkster forgot that he was now dealing with the person who had inherited his title of the biggest a-hole backstage. And Shawn was, well, about to remind him of that. During their one and only encounter at SummerSlam 2005, Shawn oversaw the hell out of the Hulkster's offense. He flopped around like a bungee jumping salmon, and this all completely ruined any credibility the match could have potentially had. It is one of the biggest tantrums that wrestling has ever seen in the middle of a ring. But you know what, considering what Hulk had done to Shawn and countless other wrestlers over the years with his creative control, you have to kind of say that the showstopper looked like he was in the right on the night. Number 4, a group of legends get upstaged by the Shockmaster. Fred Ottman had a rather decent run in WWE, first as Tugboat and then as Typhoon of the Natural Disasters. He got a prominent heel turn and reigned as one half of the tag team champions before moving over to WCW in 1993, and that's when it all went wrong, really. Ottman was repackaged as the Shockmaster, the mystery team member for the good guys heading into the War Games match at that year's Fall Brawl. On an episode of Flair for Gold, Sting and Davey Boy Smith tried to introduce their new team member in a grand old fashion. The plan was for Ottman to burst through a wall accompanied by jets of flame. Sounds pretty awesome, right? Instead, Ottman tripped over the set and fell headfirst through the wall. It would have been absolutely perfect comedy if he hadn't been given such a dramatic introduction by his teammates, but that made it even more hilarious, but unintentionally. You can hear everybody involved in the skit just trying the best to not properly laugh and lose it and crack up. They are just holding it down, and fair play to them because I would not have been able to. There was really nothing they could do to save the segment though, as Shockmaster was confined to the annals of stupid wrestling history forevermore. Number 3, Farouk gets upstaged by The Rock. The original inspiration for this very list, wouldn't you know, and thank you to Avito QQ for their Reddit post because it inspired us. Whilst getting ready for the faction's upcoming War of Attrition match, Nation of Domination leader Farouk cuts a promo backstage with Doc Hendricks. And I'd love to tell you what he talks about, but in all honesty, I have no idea. That's because I, and likely many others, were completely distracted by a young bloke named Dwayne Johnson pulling silly faces in the background. Just look at him. Rock was about 6 months into his new heel run attitude type spell after ditching the blue trunks and blue chipper attitude. However, he quickly outgrew his group that he'd been a part of during that time, the Nation of Domination, and you can literally see that happening here. So while Farouk's trying to build this match and hype it up, The Rock's just in the background going, and it's brilliant. It is literally the basis of about 40% of the Rock memes that you see on Twitter. It was just that damn good. Number 2, The Rock gets upstaged by Mick Foley. He might have got a one over on Farouk, but even the great one can get cut down to size from time to time. On an episode of Raw in the year of 2000, Mick Foley called out his old friend The Rock so they could have a chat ahead of WrestleMania. The former enemies turned pals stood opposite one another in the middle of the ring, and the crowd were loving it. They were molten hot. The Rock then paid his respects to Foley and said that it was great to have him on the show. Foley then congratulated The Rock for being a 5-time WWE champ, and he even said that that put him in the upper echelons of the sport. He then asked a rather fateful question: "How does that make you feel, Rock?" Before The Rock could fully utter his reply, Mick Foley responded with, "It doesn't matter how it makes you feel," to a huge pop. The Rock had been beaten at his own game and left speechless. The champ then began to smile and laugh as Mick Foley had finally been able to get one over on the People's Champion, and everyone loved it. It was just a lovely moment. We're all smiling. I'm still smiling to this day. Number 1, Everyone Gets Upstaged by Daniel Bryan. WWE Champion Randy Orton versus World Heavyweight Champion John Cena. Just look at that match. And it was a match to unify both of these belts and turn them into the WWE World Heavyweight Championship belts of the infinite glory and universe in all of the magic and the multiverses ever to exist on this planet, or something. So ahead of this historic night, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon hosted a segment to really build towards it and celebrate how monumental a moment this was going to be. So we had both of these competitors there, and just to add a bit more prestige to the evening in general, the Power Couple had every single former world champion they currently had on their books on the roster and had them stand around the ring, all looking at the two champions coming head to head and just looking and making faces. On this night, they just did not count on one thing though. This episode of Raw was taking place in Washington, the home state of Daniel Bryan. Bryan was at the peak of his popularity at this moment in time because many people didn't feel that he'd had a fair shake at the main event. And the audience that night just completely hijacked the entire segment, chanting for Bryan at every chance they got and derailing anything that the company previously had planned. And to make matters worse, Mark Henry lifted his hand up and was like, "Yeah, Daniel Bryan," and everyone was like, "Mark, no, don't do that, they're gonna kill you, man." Now this can be seen as one of the many moments that led to WWE being forced to throw Mr. Bryan into the main event of WrestleMania 30, of course. At the time though, it was just really sweet to see an entire arena backing their hometown boy and forcing him into the spotlight. Even if it did come at a dozen people's expense, but you know, funny though. Know of any other wrestlers who hilariously upstaged other wrestlers? Well, let me know all about them in the comments section right down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to all things What Culture Wrestling. Also, if you like this sort of stuff, then please head on over to whatculture.com and find some more fantastic articles just like the one this video you're watching right now is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for watching this lovely video today. Follow myself on Twitter at gmorgan04 and follow everyone here at What Culture at What Culture Wrestling. But more important than any of that, wherever you are on this spinning ball of chaos right now, do your best to upstage everyone. You're the star of this show and everyone needs to know more about it. Bye bye.